going to hit the go live. What could go wrong? All right. It says we've gone live on the YouTubes right here for the October 2022 board meeting. What could possibly go wrong? Hope Golick, you have the YouTubes.
Thank you, Dr. Ike. So this is the October 13th meeting of the Westlake Charter School Board of Directors. We are broadcasting live over YouTube. If you're interested in making a comment from home, please email admin@westlakecharter.com. Keep it to 250 words, and please in the subject line, list the item you wish to comment on so that we read it at the right time. We'll make every effort to read it during the meeting, and if for some chance we don't, it will be included in the minutes. With that, Amy, will you please take roll call?
Yes. Hope.
Here.
Sean. Josh.
Here.
Katie. Here. Meredith. Here. Michelle. Nurali. And Shannon. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Amy. Celebrations. I'll go first. I'd like to welcome Dr. Galloway.
Celebration. All right. Welcome.
It's nice to have both staff positions full, and welcome.
Welcome.
Josh, next.
I'm going to celebrate our audience. I like the setup, and it's already calling them in. It's good to see so many.
It is.
No, but it's just.
Josh is muted. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to tell everybody. So when it's your turn to talk, I gotta unmute. My fault.
You want me to start over?
Yeah, take it from the top. Let's turn it over to Josh Carell. Josh.
Oh, thanks, John. So I want to celebrate all these faces in front of us. We've set up the new room, and the people are coming. It's just so great to have an audience and see some more participation and get some more eyes and ears on what we do and who we are. So thank you, guys.
Love it. Now you go ahead and mute yourself when the next person unmutes himself.
Nurali.
All right. Well, I am going to celebrate, even though it hasn't occurred, the Fall Festival that is scheduled for Saturday. Woo! It is the first time we're trying to get our board to kind of participate in this event, and we're excited to really engage with our community partners working on the development committee. And so I'm excited about that. So that is what I'm going to celebrate, even though I'm 2 steps ahead.
I love it. Yeah. We sometimes celebrate in advance. What could go wrong?
Shannon.
Nice teamwork for the dream work right there.
I'm going to kind of copy Josh's celebration because I also haven't been to a board meeting in a couple months. So to come back and have this whole new setup and so many people, it's just like and new board members. And so I'm very excited to be back and see everyone.
See, you miss a day or two, what happens, huh? Look at that.
Thanks, Shannon. Steve, do you want to celebrate? Okay.
I will celebrate the Jibe Walk to School Day. It was such like a fun event. I was out in front helping car doors and stuff like that, and just the music coming from the back of the campus. So the kids are running up. Is it still going? I'm like, yep, it's still going on. So like running back there for like the dance party. So it was just a fun day and a fun event. So just thank you to our partners at Jibe and Good Day Sacramento who came out, and everyone who was a piece of that. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Steve. Dr. Galloway?
I will celebrate our fall sports teams. We had a win for soccer the other day, and that felt so good. Volleyball, I've heard, is seeded first in the league, so that feels really exciting. And we've had some good success with cross country. We have some runners who have qualified for subsectionals, so we've had a really nice.
That's great. Thanks, Ms. Davis.
I'm going to celebrate clubs at the high school. We're getting ready to launch, and we have a lot of options for our students. So just student leaders stepping up and staff members stepping up to support those. It's really great.
Thank you. Amy, would you like to celebrate?
I would. I'm so excited that people are here tonight. That is super fun. But I'm also really excited to get to work with Dr. Galloway because I was part of the second round of interviews for her, and I was super excited to have her join the team. But I haven't really had a chance to work with her because she's clear on the other side of the Potomac, like all 6 miles away. But I see her every morning running with kids. I'm like, wow, she's amazing. As I'm like chugging my coffee as I'm chugging it. So it's kind of cool that I get to work with her in this way.
Love it.
Dr.
I
Ike?
got 112 celebrations on the slides, but I would like to shout out Nancy Kong Vasquez, like a founding Westlake parent, former board member, who now, you know, his kids have gone on and she's no longer on the board, but she came out tonight to feed us all for our celebrations, like that connectedness of Westlake that you know, you may graduate, but you never really go away. You know, it's good.
Explorer for life.
Explorer for life. That's right.
Any other board comments for items not otherwise on the agenda? Seeing none. Dr. Ike, did we receive any public comments?
Donut. There we go.
Do we have donuts?
Back there. I'm like, I think there's a donut back there. I do not see, but I will check again right now while you ask if there are any other public comments.
Are there any other public comments?
People in the audience could use this time to celebrate something if they wanted to, couldn't they?
They totally could, 100%.
Nobody, okay. Nobody?
It's not working.
I was looking at like nobody. Okay.
He's staring you down.
Yeah, step up
Okay,
and
then
celebrate.
go.
Unmute on the mic and be on the YouTube.
They won't be able to hear you if you don't go to the
The
mic.
angle on the YouTube over there is great. The angle, it's a great angle. You're gonna love it.
I am going to say we had 4 of our sophomores attend. Am I supposed to start talking? Just start talking?
Just
Okay,
start
great. Cool. This is working out really well for me right now. 4 of our sophomores attended the NUSD board forum last night. It was a really amazing opportunity for them to experience local politics, and they got to ask some questions of the candidates who are running for the 2 seats on the NUSD board. And it was really exciting to ask them and to have them say, I don't know that I want to give up my Wednesday night. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm a leader at the school. I definitely want to get into it and see what it's about. And then have them leave the forum asking great questions, asking thoughtful questions about what the candidates' answers were, and excited to potentially learn more. So it was a great event. Thank you so much to St. Thomas Charter School for hosting that event. One of their seniors, it was her senior project. And so it was really a wonderful event. And thank you to all the candidates who were part of that. So, yeah.
If you could mute that one again, thank you.
Dr. Ike, do we have, well, I don't know which order to go, and now I'm flustered.
I do have one in the email box, but you can still see if there's any more.
Are there any other members of the public who'd wish to comment at this time? I don't see any. Would you like to
Sure,
read
I
your
do.
comment? Unless you're going to spread that down again.
I can use wait time. Maybe we should turn over to high school and see if we've got.
Yes.
This is awkward. Let's see. Steve, will you turn up your volume? Because if I turn up mine, I'll get feedback. So you crank your volume up so we can hear Mr. Seamus and myself. La 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 la. Sounds awesome. Mr. Seamus, are you there?
I am here.
Are there any members of the public looking to make a public comment over at the high school?
There are no members of the public looking to make a comment from the high school.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your participation.
So let's go to the written comment now, and then I'll give you the opportunity to look people down one more time.
Every time it's like the first time we've ever done it. Every time I'm like, this is surprising how the technology works. Okay, we do have one public comment. It says, good evening, board members. Thank you for taking this comment. The Fall Festival is just a few days away, and I wanted to express my heartfelt appreciation for the generous families in Mrs. Harold Jones's first grade class and Mr. Powers's 7th grade advisory class. I'm preparing the silent auction baskets for these 2 classes, and the parents have really outdone themselves. Nearly every one of my first grade families contributed to support our Sacramento Proud basket. Their enthusiasm is uplifting and reminded me of what makes Westlake Charter special. Also, a special shout out to my seasoned 7th grade parents in Mr. Powers' class who have been through it and continue to show their love and support. Parents sent money, gift cards, took advantage of Amazon Prime Day, hustled to get donations from local businesses, Love Natomas, as well as indomitable, I think that's a word, indomitable Sacramento Republic FC. Is that pronounced indomitable?
Yes, it is.
I don't know what is wrong. Without my glasses, it could be like anything. I'm really struggling on the YouTubes. I'm looking forward to the fall festival and the community building experience, and want to thank the board members, school, and teachers for their continued excellence in serving our kids. Sincerely, Ms. Kanemo. That was really cool. Yeah, Ms. Kanemo gave us a little fall festival shout out. Let me see any other indomitable notifications. Nope. Seeing none. Did you just roll your eyes? Is that what just happened? We can hear your eye roll. All right. That's all the time.
Thank you. We've been performing the last few meetings, I feel like, as we figure out technology. This is I'll celebrate us real fast before we move on. Not a lot of entities are taking on the hybrid model because of the difficulty of engaging the public both at home and in person, and having all the board members. It's rough, right? And so I appreciate everyone's patience as we figure it out and giving us grace that we're doing our best to make sure that every family at Westlake has the opportunity to participate. I mean, it makes me proud that we're doing that. I don't know that you'd find others in the area who are doing it quite as, or giving as much access as we are. With that, I'll go ahead and kick off reports. And Amber.
Okay. Hi. I think we've had a lot of talking about Fall Festival tonight, so that is something that is brewing right now. We have lots of people working on it tonight. We're, I don't know, however many hours away, less than 2 days away. So we're a little stressed, we're excited. And I also want to echo the parent kind of celebrating people. We did an all call last night because we start getting a little bit nervous a couple days out. Do we have enough volunteers? Do we have enough donations? We sent out an all call and almost everything's full now. So it's just fantastic. All the donations are full. Things are looking great. So it's very exciting. We're super excited to relaunch this event with our community. So it's going to be great. We're just a little nervous. We had bingo night last month too, which was great. We had great turnout here in this room. Lots of families coming out. We had a lot of young families, a lot of kinder families coming out, which was really fun. Winning prizes, dancing. We had a lot of fun. And then we will be launching Olympic Triathlon in a few days. Yeah. As soon as the festival's over, then we will focus on Olympic Triathlon, which is exciting and also, a little scary again. Like all these things, we're like, oh, how do we do this? So we're figuring all those things out, but we love the partnership with all of our community and our families. So that's what's going on with WAVE right now.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Charter Impact.
All right. So we met, and we kind of forgot, but it was exciting that we had 2 new members on the committee at this last meeting. It had been a while since we got together as a committee, and John had prepared an equity or a sample of our equity dashboard and some of the metrics that we're looking at pulling and how it might look if we're trying to compare the different data that we have readily available. So we talked through which types of metrics we might want to actually track, what that looks like, how we'll present it to the board, and kind of drill down on our 2 or 3 questions to keep us focused, because already in that we wanted to ask a million more questions. So I think it was a good exercise in reminding us what the project is, look at what work has been done, and focus us on a few questions so that we'll have something to share to this group in a couple of meetings.
Thank you, Shannon. Josh, in development?
We've got Fall Festival. All right, so we've got Fall Festival coming up. We want to support WAVE up. One of our board goals is to get out, reconnect with the community, bring everybody in together. We've got a fishbowl for the development committee. We want to engage with Explorer partners. We want business cards. We have cards people can put out their business. We've got cool Everest stickers to give out just to the parents who provide us this information. It's also a great opportunity for anybody on their committees to come out and recruit, tell people about your committee, recruit for your committee. I got one problem. I got nobody working from 5 to 6. I need one more volunteer so we can do this. I need somebody who can work 4 to 6. We've got shirts, we're decked out, and all we have to do, we just take all our stuff, we put it right back into Miss Wells' office. We'll have it all set up. That's all there is. I need one volunteer.
I can certainly step in if you can't get a volunteer. So keep making eye contact with them.
All right, all right.
It's effective. But if it doesn't come out, I'm in. I can.
All right.
Yeah.
We've got that set. And we got another event coming up. Chili cook-off. And the board is in.
Oh, we're cooking chili?
We're in. We're cooking chili. We've got a recipe. We're gonna earmuffs teachers. I've heard the secret is cornbread. We've got a cornbread recipe. We're going vegetarian, and we're ready to rock. Be on the lookout. We're gonna be looking for volunteers for the chili cook-off.
What day is that, Josh?
11/2. November 2nd, 2022. Be ready. If another committee wants to jump in and do their own chili cook-off, do it. It's on you. It's on you. If another committee has got chili, they want to set up a booth, enter the competition, please do. If you've got a committee meeting coming up and want to add that to your agenda, let's do this. But we're looking forward. We're bringing the chili cook-off back, and it's going to be fun.
Love it.
That's my update.
So I'll do finance in Sean's absence. The main, not the main bulk of the work, but the most important, I think, that came out of last committee meeting is on the agenda tonight. It's the financial reserve policy updates. So we'll discuss that. It's on the regular agenda. We also are continuing our review of certificated compensation. And Steve presented a thorough report on sort of where we are fiscally in the state and how things are looking in this highly volatile time. And so we're continuing to watch all that information. Governance didn't meet tonight, so I have no report for them, which kicks it off to you, Dr. Ike.
There we go. I'm not gonna be as exciting as Johnson, the chili cook-off and all the things, but I'll try to keep it lively, man. I mean, I got some stuff. Yep.
Where do you go from there?
So here's what we're gonna do. If you have to turn like this to look at the screen, you could fully turn off your camera because, if that's uncomfortable for you. If not, you do you. Hi everybody. Thank you all for being here. I know we have a special celebration after my slides, so I'll try to make them quick. However, if you've met me. Here we go. We're gonna do celebrations, strategic actions, and updates. That's what I do every time I do a report. And we'll start with celebrations. There's lots to celebrate, but I'll try to keep them short. And we'll start with this, right? High school student council elections were amazing this year. They're outside in the Oasis. Our students campaigned and made videos, and the election was held at the high school campus. The hallways were filled with campaign posters. It was an amazing event. But more so, the students who now represent our high school are just a phenomenal group of students. So very proud of the work that our students are doing, that our leadership teachers doing, our activities director, Ms. Grimaldi, and all the staff there who are guiding these students. It was a great bit. We always like to kind of throw out a little hashtag joyful learning in the slides, because everywhere you go on Westlake, any classroom you pop into, you're just going to see some joyful learning. Here's some plant propagation. Is that a word? Yeah, planting in Mr. Mallow's class, which is all the students got to propagate a little piece of a plant, put them up on this little windowsill, and now the whole wall is turning into a living wall, and the kids are each taking care of their own plants. If I had done one, it'd be the one dead one on the thing. But I love that they're loving their classroom. Here's students loving up on when we're giving out free books out front. The kids are like, free books! I love it, right? There's a little science experiment happening there on the right where they're studying ocean and tectonic plate interplay. Oh, look, software update. Awesome timing. Maybe it's just on this screen. Maybe I'd cancel. Thank you. Oh, technology. Gotta love our Spirit Days. Hashtag WCS Spirit Fridays. Sports Day was just recently. I love the kids, and I love everybody dressing up, but it's always the day of Miss Robin Harold Jones, who dressed up as the 49er mascot. Love it. So great. Hey, it is Bully Prevention Month, and it is happening kindergarten through 10th grade. It is on both campuses. we are neck deep in it, and there's a lot of great opportunities for us to engage in kind of this active, fun way of bringing this month to life, but also some really deeply rooted, good learning opportunities for our students, and it's happening on both campuses in developmentally appropriate ways. So it's really cool. You'll see like the poster back there says start with hello. You go over to the high school, you know, both campuses are going to have kind of a mix-it-up day type function. It's just a really good opportunity for us to celebrate the work that our staff do in such an amazing way and take this so seriously. Club Rush at the high school is a celebration, right? When we built that high school, as we said, hey, we're expanding. What is one thing that's really Westlake? We said, hey, everyone offers clubs. But I think one of the things that we're committing to is like, how can we ensure that every student has access to a club? So how do we build time in during the day? How do we potentially utilize Flexbox or activity, or whether it's lunch? How do we ensure that every student has access and is plugged in and engaged? And this is one of those ways that we do that. And that's part of our call based on our mission statement. It says academic and social emotional are the balance. We're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month across the organization right now and seeing some really cool manifestations of that. I mean, you can see some Abby Grimaldi work over there, taking over some hallways, some students in Mrs. Mosqueda's classroom, some incredible projects. It's just across the K-10 right now. Hispanic Heritage Month is rocking. I will dive into strategic actions. I think I have two, which you would think would take a short amount of time. You would probably be wrong. I'll try to make them quick. I want to talk about this really cool pilot that we're doing. It's an internship credential program, and we're piloting it this year. And then I want to talk about a math pilot that we're doing. So 2 piloting themes here. Let me give you the backstory on the pilot internship credential program. So you could kind of contextualize this with the backdrop of this national teacher shortage that we've all been discussing for the last couple of years. Everyone is looking to recruit and retain the highest quality teachers in America. I think we have them here right now, but we're always looking, how do we make sure we're recruiting incredible teaching staff? The next piece of that is, as you'll recall, if those of you who have been here, the Impact team in 2019 wrote a white paper on diversifying our staff to meet the incredible diversity of our community, right? We know that 82% of K-12 staff on average across America identify as white female, and that, you know, in an incredibly diverse community like ours, how do we recruit more teachers who reflect the broad diversity of our student population? So as the board has made that one of its initiatives, and our impact team wrote this white paper on this work, advising the school on how might we do this work, how might we really invest in this. One of the recommendations from the literature is GYO, grow your own, right? We know that our certificated teaching population often identifies more typically as Caucasian or white, and our classified staff often are more representative of educators of color. Well, how do you get this classified staff to become teaching staff? So you create these bridge programs that say, hey, do you have a college degree, or are you close to getting a college degree? Well, how can we help you get your credential to become a teacher? So about a year ago, funny enough, like at this meeting a year ago, we were talking about substitute recruitment. We were, hey parents, do you have a bachelor's degree? Come on out, like we need more subs. A year later, our sub tank is filled with we have 9 full-time, 180-day substitute teachers right now on staff. We also have several classified staff members with bachelor's degrees. And when you look at that tank is more representative of our community by ethnicity than the national average. So we're like, hey, that's a great place to start. So Steve did some great work in identifying one-time funds that we could utilize for this project, and you can read about that in this brief right here that I'll make sure is either in the bracket or we haven't dropped it in there yet, because we kind of run late today. But this is just a memo that we put in the Westlake Weekly, so you have access to it in the weekly. It just describes how the program works. What it says is that if you work at Westlake Charter School, have a bachelor's degree, and have an interest in becoming a teacher, we will invest in you. There is a program with the Sacramento County Office of Education, which is a pre-internship program. And if you apply this month or middle of next month, I think is the deadline, and we get you into that program, then we will pay for you to take that winter set of courses, and by April, you will have an internship eligibility letter. Now, we've helped you get that because we've invested in you and we've helped you apply and we've helped you get through it financially because we paid for it. Once you have the internship eligibility letter, if you then apply for an open position next year and are granted that position, then you could enter into the Sacramento County Office of Education's 2-year internship credential program, of which we will pay, I think, over 80% of in this memo. So it's a $16,000 investment per person that would get into the program. But think about what it could do. Like, we have several interns right now, not to name names, so I won't, but like, we have an amazing teacher right now in our primary grades who was an instructional aide here, who knows our kids and loves our kids and gets how we do what we do. And we got her in an internship program last year, and she's interning. We also have an ed specialist this year as part of our K-10 organization who is a phenomenal educator, but is also an intern, and that person started here as an instructional aide. So we just love this idea of recruiting from within and growing a classified staff into our teaching staff. Any questions about this particular piece? No? It's a cool idea. We'll see it evolve. I'll come back and report out how many people will be able to get in the funnel into the November program, how many people are coming out with a eligibility certificate, and we'll let you know. The second thing I want to talk about is a math pilot, where we have our academic readiness report later today. You're going to see that our math scores, much like the math scores all across the entire state, have really taken a hit. We were already in the works to get a math program up and running this year before our scores came back, but I'm like, oh, well, great. Scores went down, as they did everywhere, but we are investing in a new math curriculum because the last time we adopted the math curriculum at Westlake Charter School, I believe, was the year I got here. Which has been like 9 years. So this is a good opportunity. So during this year, we're piloting 2 different math programs at 2 different grade levels at 1st and 5th. And by the close of this year, we'll start onboarding a new math piece for next year, which we're super excited about. Any questions on the math piece? Cool. Updates, I think I have all on one slide. I'll try and get through them for you. We have our Silicon Schools fall visit coming up, which we're super excited about. For those of you who are new, or for those of you who don't recall, we have partnered with Silicon Schools to help expand our K-8 into high school, and they are granting us up to $200,000 a year for several years. And I believe part of that grant is that they come out and visit us, and they check our metrics, academics, enrollment, staffing, and all of the report that we've sent to them is checkbox, perfect. Staffing looks great, enrollment looks great, academics look great. The high school is right where Silicon Schools would want us to be as one of their model schools. And so we're gonna have our in-person visit with them coming up. We're super excited. They're great partners for us. Goal Area 2, Objective 2 calls for our school to be really investing deeply in professional learning communities as how we work here as collaborators. We were on track to really do a big launch of this back in January of 2020, and then the whole pandemic hit, and we got a 2-year tailspin. But we just relaunched it this year. I told you about this, I think, at the August board meeting. And Mrs. Kaya is leading a kind of a guiding coalition on this, and it's really going well. We're really excited. We're not moving super fast, but I am here to tell you that, like, the work of a collaborative team is to take relevant local data and say, hey, all of these students, not just my students in my classroom, but all of our students in our grade level belong to us. How are our students doing? How are our students doing by subgroup? How are we going to ensure our students get where we want them to go? And that work's already done really well here at Westlake, but we think the work we're doing right now is only going to move us to the next level on that. We're really excited about it, and I wanted to kind of give you an update that's happening. This is kind of a cool celebration / update, and it's an update on our CIF status, right, in our league. We have been approved by the Impact League in the SAC Joaquin section. Now, we were on pace to get approved for that. It's typically a 2-year approval process, and then you go into the board meetings where they officially approve you. We're way ahead of schedule on that. We kind of got early this year the green light, like, hey, you're in. But if we didn't get like the gavel fall approval this last month, technically any of our kids performing athletics right now couldn't have played any playoffs, which wouldn't have mattered because we're only like sophomores. There's no way we're gonna, our kids are doing great. So the impact is that we have, early playoff eligibility that we shouldn't have had this early. We really shouldn't have been playoff eligible until maybe this time next year at the end of 2 full years. But it's a really cool update and celebration that our students who are out there competing right now as we speak for potential playoff berth have the opportunity to play in playoffs because of the hard work of Emily Batten, John O'Con, those people who kind of like stayed on top of the board saying, hey, Westlake Charter School, you guys voted on us yet? I think we just bombarded them with questions and they finally answered. So that feels great. And then we talked about Care Solace. Kevin Seamus came out last month and talked about that. I just wanted to give you an update that trainings have already begun to happen for launch teams, and the launch has begun internally, and we already have students, staff, and families being supported by this program. So I just kind of want to let you know that we talked about it last month as something launching, and it is now launched. So that is the end of my report. Oops, that's that celebration I want to do. Is that where we're going? I don't know. Where are we going? We got to go back to the agenda, huh? Yes. Yeah, I just jumped one slide ahead. Back to you.
Would you like to kick off our celebration?
Well, you should say. I have slides on that. I have a slide prepared, in fact. This is actually why we have a room full of people, everybody. We reached out to community members. We said, hey, you know what? Let's have a little celebration. Like, let's get the band together, and not so you could all listen to our reports, but I'm sure they were riveting. Thank you. That's the word I was going for. Chili cook-off. The reason we called everybody here tonight is because our board establishes goals every year, and one of the board goals this year is board goal 3. And you can see it says, the WCS board will make efforts to improve public access by greater involvement at WCS functions, focusing on outreach and supporting WCS efforts to do what? Focusing on Westlake Charter School's efforts to help reconnect our community. The board has asked that all staff, I'm the only staff member that works for the board, but under me, all staff who work with me, that we help to reconnect our community. And a year ago, that was really kind of a scary premise. We're like, can we have a rally? Can we have sports outside? Do our basketball players and volleyball players have to wear masks? I mean, last year was a stressful challenge to try to figure out how to get this community even on campus together. But this year, our charge is to take it to the next level, not just to be in spaces together, but to truly reconnect our community. Houston and I talk about this all the time, that school and community collaboration. The executive director also has a goal number 1, that says focus on reconnecting our community. So I wanted to start a celebration tonight, not that this work is done, but to really celebrate that this work has started. Like, it is palpable. Like, I think we can all feel that this year already feels different than the last year and a half or whatever it's been. I just want to share a couple slides. We had family bingo night with family members who came to this space. Like, I was smiling because I think she was like here and trying to win, man. She was in it. No, she's like, we won, right? Now, it isn't just about being in a space together, right? Because, and it's funny, I was just riffing on this the other day. There's a book called Bowling Alone that talks about the 3 spaces, right? Home and work and that third space. In America, that third space was the pub or social clubs or the bowling club. But those things are starting to seemingly go away in America, and people are spending more time on the interwebs, and especially these last 2 years. And the call is for us to create spaces where people show up to, somewhat awkwardly, because social awkwardness is a thing, show up, and then end up rubbing elbows with other human beings and being like, oh, you're not so scary. So reconnecting our community is partly about just creating spaces where human beings are in the same space together. Here's bingo night. Thank you, WAVE, for making that happen for us. Sign language elective performance. Our teachers are saying, hey, can we have performances again? Can we ask the families to come watch those performances? Can we ask other grade levels to come and watch those performances? Thank you to our teaching staff. Our Natomas Unified School District candidate forum. Can our students not just come to open spaces here, but go to community open spaces and be part of, rubbing elbows with other people in other ways? Team timeout. I just put this on there because the admin team got together, went and saw Brandon Rubin's play that he was in. And you know what? 2 years ago, nobody was going out together because we all were like, want to get on a Google Meet? That'll be just as fun. It wasn't, right? But now, people are going out and doing things. By the way, Brandon Rubin is amazing, and this play was phenomenal, and the admin team all went out and enjoyed it. In-person back-to-school night. Let's act like that didn't just happen and that it wasn't a huge deal. It was huge to have back to school night at the K-8 and at the high school and to make connections with human beings again, right? Having community volunteers come out and build tables, to some people it's like, well, who cares? We care. Like the fact that people can be on this. Do you remember we couldn't be on the campus? It was awful, right? You just said that on YouTube. I caught that. That was Amber Houston. But now it's the door's open. We're building tables. Look at those guys building tables, right? On-campus field lessons, off-campus field lessons. We are giving ourselves permission to do what we do, to create those experiences that bring us together, right? Bringing in outside vendors on, like A Touch of Understanding, like the food trucks. Like, what better example do you need than bringing food trucks on campus, right? Professional development in person. Staff meetings were not in person for 2 years. This school is partly successful because of the human beings and the way they really connect with each other. And we lost some connection through that screen. And bringing back professional development in person and staff meetings in person for both the presenter and the receivers has been magic. Sports. I know we did sports last year, but we didn't do them at the middle school. We're telling our kids, hey, social emotional is super important. This is one of the biggest protective factors for teenagers against loneliness, depression, self-harm. This is a factor, and the fact that it's on, and not only are they enjoying it on the field and on the courts, if you've been in this room or that room there when a volleyball game is going on, the crowd is incredibly loud because people are packing it in. People are coming to the third space, which is school, and jamming and creating community. We're reconnecting our community. We're having rallies and activities, coffee talks, in-person wave meetings, right? All of these things. The fact that parent conferences are rocking this week, they're in-person parent conferences, and that was a question, like, are we going to do that or not do that? And if there's a reason to pull back and not, okay, but I've heard lots of good feedback. Okay, I'm super enjoying the opportunity to connect with other human beings. And then I think this is the last slide, but International Walk to School Day was nuts. 230 walkers from Burberry Park to the campus. Good morning, good day, Sacramento. Total mayhem. If you saw the video, oh my God, Jen Kyatt was just off camera going. It was wild, but our kids were just celebrating being together outdoors in a joyful way. All right, coming soon to a campus near you. Look at these events. Fall Festival, Olympic Triathlon, Chili Cook-Off, things we couldn't do, things we're going to do, things that will become third space opportunities, and they will be a chance for us to reconnect our community. So, with that said, the amazing Nancy Kong Vasquez brought us some treats. They're in the back there. She has from savory to sweet across that table back there. I would encourage everybody to take the next 15 minutes, if we can, to connect with other human beings in this room. Make this a third space. Let's celebrate the fact that we are back on the path toward being a connected community, and then we'll reconvene our board meeting 15 minutes later, and then we won't hold you all if you don't want to stay for the 72-slide academic report. Good. Is that what we're doing?
Yes. And you think he's kidding about the 72 slides? He's probably not. It's totally like the one that, if not the most important thing we do other than our fiduciary duties, but it won't be short. He times himself.
15-minute timer. All right, 15 minutes of celebrations. Go now. Everybody turn off your mics, and you on the YouTubes, we'll be back in 15 minutes. Sorry. It's going to be a long, just fast forward or something.
I forgot to tell you to make a screen,
Oh, yeah. I should have done that.
Put the timer.
Well, I can put it right up here.
Can you put a timer up?
I got it. I got you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That way people know.
I will do that.
I'll just sit there and they can stare at my face for 15 minutes.
Who wouldn't want that opportunity?
We'll get Ratatouille and they can watch the baby rat.
Kristen Cosby back here? Who you gotta go talk to? Yep, but I gotta duplicate this slide right quick.
Well, I'm not really known for that. That's not my.
15-minute break. We'll be back at, what time are we back at? At 7:26.
sometimes.
That is fabulous.
Dude, I coached soccer for 2 weeks.
I've been coaching soccer all season, brother.
It was fun to get back in. I no clue what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh man, but I was the loudest dude out there. Man, I laughed. Fourth.
You can run like a witch.
I literally see, I'm not kidding, I see her every morning when I'm going in, exhausted and tired and just like wishing her and I would just happy. She's running with the kids and she's like all ready to go. I'm like, oh my god.
Happy comes next. Like shower, then happy.
Get up and come over and run.
The best part of my day.
Open up the fridge.
I have once or twice gotten here and been like, so my lunch is still in the fridge. That's fine.
And I've done it. I'm like, just hop on. What is it? Oh, that's
What's happening?
My lunch is good.
Yeah.
Sorry, what? Sorry. Just remember you have a hot mic right now. I can hear all the conversations about coaching soccer. Who's hot?
I think I just fixed it.
Okay, because everybody shows muted on the screen.
Yeah. Well,
Let's go.
Okay, all of you out there on YouTube Landia, we are reassembling our board now. They're making their way up to the diocese. We had a wonderful
You're still muted.
little celebration. The YouTubes can hear me.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So everybody's reassembling now. Do, 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 do. Yes, I'm encouraging all the staff to please, thank you for the celebration, but please, staff, you please go home. Go to your family. And take some food with you.
Formulas in. Put them in a box.
I know the slide says on YouTube exactly what we're gonna do, so.
We're never on
Yeah,
time.
I know. We're live. Yeah, hot mic.
I'm not sure.
It's okay. I will slow. You have never been on
It's
time.
true. It's true.
In the cup on my desk, and the formula's in a can in the fridge. You don't have to. I'm just being silly.
Oh, you feeding the rat?
Okay.
Want him? Take him.
Board members, if you could, when you return, turn your cameras back on so the YouTubes will be able to see us in session. That would be good.
Josh is back there.
Just
recruiting for the
missing
chili
Josh.
cook-off. back
He's
there
recruiting for the chili cook-off. I love it. I love it. Okay, I will unmute this mic and. All right. Okay, I'm turning that mic on and this mic on. And this mic on. All right. I think we got it all covered.
I have a camera. I have a mic.
Hope there a formal process means? No. All right.
We're just going to jump right into our. I'm not unmuted. So we will go ahead and jump back into our regular agenda, which brings us to the consent agenda. We have 5 items on tonight. Are there any questions about any of them? And if there aren't, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
And if you can unmute when you move. I don't know if you did or not.
I'll move.
I'm really surprised my mic doesn't pick them up with
It
his
may.
volume.
It may.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nerali. Amy, before you call the vote, though, John, can you please see if there's any public
Yeah,
comment on
good call.
consent?
Good call. Stand by.
I gotta do it myself. Consent goes so fast that sometimes I forget to.
I see no public comments.
Perfect. With that, Amy, will you please take a roll call vote?
Hope?
Yes.
Sean? Not here, sorry. Josh?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Otherwise, we don't know which one it is.
Yes. Meredith?
Yes.
Nerali?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Sorry, that was a great moment right then.
Yeah, because I was like,
Yeah,
what does
I
that
got
mean?
2 MGs, right?
Can't tell I live with them. Hey, Steve, your name's next to this item. Are you going to do me the pleasure of presenting it tonight? Would you mind? That'd be great.
Go ahead and unmute and turn on your camera, please. Quite all right. Quite all right.
All right. So the Finance Committee has been reviewing the financial reserve policy for a number of months now. It's gone through several iterations, was close to getting approved at one point. We wanted to scratch on it a little bit more. The revisions tonight just add some clarity to, we think, our operational reserves, program reserves, and excess reserves, essentially. And so we were looking to bring that forward for approval this evening to the board.
Part of the reason why Steve asked you to present it, this policy is just taking a slightly different pathway to the board. So traditionally, this would have gone to governance tonight on the regular agenda and then been on consent. But our finance chair, it was unable to come tonight. And so we didn't have it at governance. So I just wanted to make sure that we gave you a little bit more information other than just a board brief to let you know what that is. Are there any other board questions on this item? Seeing none, another real quick check on public comment.
I see no public comments.
Perfect. Is there a motion to approve? During snack time, it's always rough.
I'll move.
Oh, good job. Thank you, Josh. Is
I'll
there
second.
Thank you, Shannon.
I love everybody's got the cameras off because they're eating. Like, a lot of goodies here. It's good. It's good.
Vote, please.
Yep. Hope,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Meredith,
Yes.
Nurali, Shannon.
Yes.
Perfect. And now, during John's 72 slides, please feel free to eat or grab snacks. You don't need to stay seated because there's plenty of food back there.
Yeah, and if you need to turn off your camera because you're gonna be turning toward the screen, I'm totally okay with cameras off, and I'm sure your YouTube audience will understand. So yes, let's dive into our academic readiness review. It's really kind of exciting because we haven't had the opportunity to really dive into disaggregated data in a few years in a really meaningful way. And by that I mean we've done NWEA, we have had access to STAR scores last year, but not full-blown CASP. Now, when I say CASP, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight, it is actually even still a modified CASP. CASP was previously 52 questions. Now they cut that in half to 26 questions. And we don't really have any, as of yet, any statistical analysis that says, like, hey, did it actually measure the same thing? But what we do know is the entire state of California did not as well as anybody would like, because the state of California has yet to actually release their statewide data, which the rumblings in the edu sphere is like, well, why are they not releasing it? Well, because it's been really alarming to see the gaps. And we're going to see them tonight. I'm going to show you in advance kind of some of my observations, then I'm going to walk you through it. We're going to walk through CASP, and then we're going to walk through NWEA, and we're going to walk down a similar school demographic breakdown, and we're going to walk through what the California dashboard looks like. And it's probably 30 minutes. So again, like, if you need to get up and stretch your legs, it's okay. And stop me, I'm going to say stop me if you've heard this one. Just stop me along the way with any questions you have. Let's dive in. I'm going to start with my observations. This is the slide that I built at the end of building this report. And I put it at the end, and I thought, well, if they're still awake, they'll get my observations. And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the beginning, so that you see what I saw before you see how I saw it. Does that make sense? So let's take a look at observations. Number one, we have a new baseline that is lower than previous baseline. Why did I say baseline? Because the state of California has come out and said, whatever you do, don't compare the 22 data, 2022, to 2019. Don't do that. And everybody I've talked to, what are the first thing they did? Well, they compared it. So we're going to too. And we're not going to take the advice of like, don't compare the data, because how could we not compare the data? Now I get it. It may not be comparable, but it is our new baseline, and I'm comparing it to our old baseline. And my first observation is our new baseline is lower than our old baseline. Check. Really perfect timing, because somebody whom I speak with often about the achievement gap just entered the room, and this is a really interesting observation that I made in the data, and I want you to see it tonight, that the achievement gaps in the new baseline are greater than previous gaps. So we all fell. When you just look at the overall numbers, you're like, oh, well, everybody went down. Well, did we all go down, or did we go down at different rates? And we're going to look at that today in the subgroup data. You're going to see some positives, but also some like, interesting. What are we going to do about that? I also saw that special education and English learners made growth between 2019 and 2022, which was an interesting subgroup anomaly. I actually had when you turn your volume all the way down over there on the end, that way we don't echo. Yep. Actually, I had a charter leader reach out to me and say, hey, I got a hold of the data and saw your students' disabilities data. How did you guys go up? Nobody went up. How did you do that? And I said, well, let's have coffee. So the actions that I'm going to talk about at the end of this report, after those observations, are going to be, hey, we're going to utilize this data through the collaborative work we're doing PLCs, right? We are engaged, as I told you earlier, in goal area 2, objective 2, really developing collaborative teams that utilize local data to drive outcomes. Now, this data that we're looking at, CASP data, this is not what we consider local data, but NWA could be utilized as local data for PLC, along with benchmark data. We're also going to talk about that math pilot that I told you about. Well, yes, you're going to see our math scores took a big hit, as did the entire state of California and all of our partners in the neighborhood. Math, it was really the big falling point in California this year. And luckily, we're right on the precipice of adopting a new math program, which we think will help us. Now, none of these actions that I'm pitching you here are in reaction to the analysis, because all of these things were set in motion by the strat plan and by our normal operating procedures before this data came out. But I think these are the things that align to and speak to what we're about to talk about. Also, we're going to leverage that new data dashboard that we've been talking about through the impact team to more regularly monitor outcomes, and that's board goal 1 and executive director goal 2. Katie Davis has been really diving into that. We're already seeing some really interesting analysis that's allowing us to look at local benchmark data juxtaposed to NWA data, juxtaposed to CASP data, and really giving us an interesting new way to look at data and say, hey, how can we continue to ensure our students are making progress on these topics? So those are my initial observations. I'll show you this slide again at the end, and maybe you will have arrived in the same place as I have, and maybe we'll play a little what do you notice, what do you wonder, and you will have observed other things as well. So again, stop me at any time. We're going to go over CASP, similar school demographic data, NWA, and the California State Dashboard. Here's the great state of California. We're going to be talking about CASP, right? This is the California assessment of student progress and performance. It's on a quartile from standard not met to standard nearly met. The top two, the 3 and 4, are the ones we're typically measuring at this point. What percentage of your students were a 3 met standard or a 4 exceeded standard? Now, this is on a quartile. I know when we get to NWA, we're on a quintile, and you're like, well, how do you measure these two? We're talking about CASP on a quartile, and typically what we put in these little boxes over here are what percentage of your students met or exceeded standard. Again, I'm going to show you 2019. Everyone says, don't do this. We can't help ourselves. We're going to compare, right? So here in 2019, the state of California had 51% of all of its students met standard. In 2022, it dropped to 44%, right? So we had a drop there. And in math, it went from 40%, dropped 7 points, down to 33%. We have not yet seen disaggregated data from the state of California. So as I go into my report today, I'm going to do some disaggregated data pieces as we look at our achievement gap, but you can't look at the achievement gap yet for the state of California because the data is still embargoed, which means either things are gunked up in the data system or like we're all trying to figure out how to explain what happened. I don't know. I'm not in that room, but I do look at the fact that we are in mid-October and that data's not out. I'm like, that's going to be interesting to see based on what we see here. So again, here's the big red X. Don't compare year to year. What they're saying is we are starting over in 2022. And when we get to the dashboard, they actually, on the title of the dashboard, it says we are restarting or relaunching the accountability system, which is a really interesting way to look at it. Let's go into what we do. I could not help myself. I still put those -7s there in comparison because I think it contextualizes where we are. We were a 44-33 in the state of California. Both of those are down 7 from previous year. Everybody understand that? Cool. This, as you all know, is Alaska, right? Same joke every year. It's the shape of the Sacramento County. That's Sacramento County. So all the students in Sacramento County were a 45-32, and they went down a 5 and a 6. True? Now, what you're going to see next is the Natomas Unified School District, and the Natomas Unified School District, on all the next slides, I've taken out all the names of all the schools that we typically compare to because this is what we're trying not to do. We're trying not to use this as comparative data, but on this one slide, as it shows state, county, district, school, us being school, I left the data in there because this data has already been reported to the Natomas Unified School District's board in a public meeting, and so therefore I was like, okay, I'm okay putting this out here. So they are a 44-29 in the district, and this is where our number is going to come out. We dropped in English and in math. You'll see here we are still on this slide the highest performing in both English and math, which feels good, until you also see we had the biggest drop of anyone on this slide. So you're like, oh, celebration, but maybe not, but still feels good, but kind of feels horrible. So welcome to inside my brain for the last couple of weeks. Now, we're going to unpack this row by row for several more slides, but this is the gist. If you walked away with this, you're like, okay, I get it. We went down a little bit English language arts. We took a hit in math, but comparably, I mean, on the grand scale, hey, Westlake, you're still doing okay. And what you're going to see is compared to our local partners, the people we typically compare it to, we're also doing okay. We're in the game. There's no cause for like rip the big alarm, ring the alarm. But you know us, we're just going to dig in and keep trying to figure out how to grow and make it better. So let's talk about our comparable schools. I love to do this for our board, not to play gotcha with you, but to show you how important this demographic data is. I have 4 columns up there. One of those columns is Westlake Charter School. The other 3 columns are local schools, right? They might be charter schools, they might be traditional public schools, but they're local schools who typically compare to us in their closeness in demographic data. So here's our free and reduced lunch program numbers. One of these, or 2 of these schools are at 33%, one's at 39, one's at 21. Y'all with me that those are 4 different schools? Check, right? I did not put enrollment in because once you saw exactly what our number was, you're like, that's our school right there. But let's look at ethnicity. As this has shifted at our school over at least the 9 years that I've been here. One of these schools has 12% African American, one is 11%, one is 6%, one is 8%. One of these schools has a Latinx Hispanic population of 29% versus 20, I think that's 8, but without my glasses it could be 26, thank you. 24 and 31. There's our Asian population there. And there is your white population there, 16, 24, 17, and 19. I wonder which school we are. Do you know? Don't hold up any fingers yet. Which school are we? I will put in, we're alpha, beta, gamma, delta. That was just fun to do. And there's our enrollment. So now you're like, oh, I know which one we are. Do you know which one we are? Yeah, we are the alpha. We are alpha. But what's interesting about that data right there is that demographic data has shifted. I wouldn't say dramatically, but significantly in the last just 4 or 5 years, right? The Caucasian population, or the white population 8 years ago was 28%. It's down to 16%. Our African American population was in single digits eight years ago. And at one point, Westlake Charter School was only 12% free and reduced lunch. We as a board have made a commitment to diversifying our population by really reaching out and recruiting and saying, hey, we want everybody at this school and reduce barriers and get people. And so now our school looks more like the neighborhood that we serve, and we love that. Some of the other schools have also shifted their population slightly if you're a data junkie and been watching, and you would know and see how they've shifted. Why do I tell you that? Well, because we're going to compare our scores to each other, but we're not like perfect matches, right? Right? We're not, right? We're all different. Some of the schools are bigger, some of the schools are a little smaller, some of the demographics are a little different from school to school. I show you that, then I've mixed up the groups. See, the alpha that was the alpha before, the beta, the gamma, I mixed them all up because I'm not trying to give it away of who's who, and I'm not going to tell you because I've made a commitment to not out somebody else's data today. That will come in future months when the data becomes unembargoed. But I still think it's worth saying the schools that you're looking at on this screen are somewhat similar to us, right? We didn't pick Jefferson Elementary School down on Pebblewood because demographically their data is very different than us. And their outcomes are very different, so it's not as comparable. But these are fairly comparable schools right here. So schools A, B, C, and Westlake in English language arts, I told you, we're at 62. One of our partner schools is also a 62. One of them is 1 point below us, and one of them is 4 points above us. So we're all within 2 to 4 points of each other. Okay, check. In math, we took a big drop, right? We took that huge drop. Well, we dropped all the way down to 1 point away from school C, 2 points away from school B, and school A is, I would say, significantly higher than us. So I reached out to school A, and I was like, hey, can I talk to you? What are you guys doing? And they actually were the ones who said to me, well, what are you doing with students with disabilities? Because you're killing us with students with disabilities. So as myself and this other executive director started jamming on data and transparently just being like, well, let's throw it on the table. Show me your cards. It was very interesting when we started getting into demographic breakdown, which we're going to do next on achievement gap data. Because then you start to realize, oh, by subgroup, you're outperforming us here and we're outperforming you here, but we have less of these and you have more of those, and there you go. Now you look at these overall scores being 2 to 4 points apart and you go, well, it somewhat breaks down by demographic. And go, okay, fine, let's still jam. you're clearly doing something in math. And they had just adopted a math program, a new math curriculum, a full year before the pandemic. So they actually got a year and, what was it, 7 months? So they're like 2 years into this math program. COVID hits, the math program's got a bunch of online stuff, and they held strong through math. They did great. Now you look at the English language arts, we took a 1 point drop, and we took a 9 point drop in math. And so I, huddled the admin team, like, hey guys, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Well, all throughout the COVID years, we were heavily using Lexia, which wasn't everybody's favorite thing, but we just read a white paper report this week that Kaya found. She's like, hey guys, look at this. And it's this interesting paper about the schools that used Lexia during this last season and what it did for these scores. And sure enough, like, we held strong partly because we had interventions that were appropriate for reading. We also had our new phonics program, which we happened to adopt heading into this pandemic. So our teachers had that. What didn't we have? We struggled. Katie knows, you're nodding. Like, we struggled through the pandemic with we need a good math intervention piece that we just didn't have. And our old curriculum was adopted like the year Common Core came out. It was just like, this curriculum's old. So I think it's interesting talking to school A leaders and be like, what'd you do? And their math curriculum was just good timing on their part. So yeah, I think we're doing the right work to go forward, but it is a good moment to a little checkup from the neck up. Hope.
Is it, just out of curiosity, not by means of comparison, is their program one of the ones we're piloting? Or are we, which is fine if we're not. I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm not trying to out them. So I'm like, is this how it is? It could
If it outs them, don't worry about it.
We're trying to really protect that.
How's this? Can I rephrase this? If it's not one we're currently piloting, can we at least compare it to the ones we are?
Great comment. Yes. If it's not, it could be. Yeah, good. It is, but yeah, whatever. Yeah. No, it's good. It was good. No, it's good. It's good. And honestly, look, I mean, you could throw 6 curriculums on the table, and I think anybody who adopted any of those 6 2 years prior to the pandemic was going to come out of the pandemic better than people who didn't. The programs that are out there are solid. The ones we're piloting are rock solid. Nirali?
I just had a question, and this may not even be relevant, but I was just kind of thinking about us and our piloting program of math. Has CASP really changed kind of what they're looking at in terms of the math curriculum, maybe differently than the test scores? I hate using the word test scores, but the curriculum by which we measured ourselves back in 2019. I mean, has the fundamentals of what the expectation drastically changed? And I mean, I know the word drastic is kind of
2019 and 2022, we don't think that the claims, or the domains that are measured on CASP have been shifted or altered at all. They're still the same standards that are lined up. The test itself has changed. The fact there was a 52 question test and now it's shifted to a 26 question test, we don't know. Is it good for test fatigue? Yes, but does it give you as many questions on the same claim? I mean, maybe on this particular number sense claim or domain, I answer 3 questions correctly and 1 wrong, but now we cut that in half and I get 1 right and 1 wrong. Does that affect my score? Maybe. I mean, that's beyond my capacity, but what we're measuring theoretically is exactly the same.
okay. Thank you.
I need my recollection refreshed. Even though it's less questions, is it still adaptive? Was CASP never adapted? And am I confusing it with NWEA? Because didn't the questions used to sort of push you further and harder if you were getting them right? And if there's less questions, wouldn't they push you? If you miss one early, is there more potential to still show your mastery of a subject?
I don't know what happened to the test when it got shorter and whether or not the adaptivity. I will find out though. Amy, let's ask that question. I think it's a great question, and our partners at SCO would know that. That's a good question.
It's just always hard to know how many opportunities does the student have. I don't want to say to recover because it's not recover, but to show what they know. And for whatever reason, they answer a question wrong, and that shuts that pathway down. And they're not really given the opportunity to show what they can do.
Well, with 72 slides left, I know, I love it. I clearly love it. I think there's a very interesting conversation that we're starting to have around the equity dashboard, as you start to say, hey, what do local benchmarks measure versus like this assessment? And I believe that our teachers know our students better than CASP will ever know in 26 minutes and 26 questions. And so I was talking to another educator in the EduSphere outside of here, talking admin to admin about this topic. And I was riffing on like, well, if you look at the percentage of students who are scoring a 3 or better on CASP and the same student population and how many of them are scoring X or better on their standards-based grades, you know, a 2.5 or above, or whether it's a B, C, D. And that administrator that I spoke with said, yeah, I mean, we see it too, you know, we really see inflated grades. And I'm like, I pause. I don't see it as inflated grades. I see it as deflated standardized test scores. I know that the teacher knows better if this child has obtained mastery on this claim and domain than you're ever going to get off 3 questions on it. So it's in there, Hope. The test construct is in there as a factor, but there's no other way to create comparability. This is how we do it.
Well, and I think just real fast, I think it lends to the discussion we're having an impact about whether or not we pull the Band-Aid off of CASP altogether in our, I don't want to say you don't focus on it anymore, but we are talking about like where does it in the hierarchy of how we measure student achievement and we do those things, where does it fit? And so this discussion really in my mind helps to coalesce the fact that we really do need to look at it, because I agree, our teachers know our students best. So
however, comparable data is relevant to the rechartering and the reauthorization process, and those things will always be more important to the charter than they will to the traditional public schools on the street. So we have always got to play this game while we're up for reauthorization every 5 years. It's just part of the deal.
Oh no, we are in a hard place. It's just a great conversation we're having an impact that I think dovetails so nicely.
I love it. So there's the long and short of comparability within driving distance. Now let's dive into the achievement gap, because our charter calls for us to be closing or reducing the achievement gap. And there's a great conversation for us to dive into. And I'm hoping on my screen it's pretty small. Can you all see these slides okay? All right, so let's take it from the top. We are in 2019 in English Language Arts in CASP. So this is back in 2019, and the numbers up there are the numbers from California. Now, I don't want to go too deep dive into why we use California, because we were measuring achievement gap in a way that we can't do now because we don't have the California data. So let's just do the simple math. Between African American and white students, because often in literature we talk about the black-white achievement gap, in the African American versus white students in the state of California, we see a 32-point achievement gap in English Language Arts on CASP in 2019. In that same year at Westlake Charter School, in our effort to reduce or eliminate the achievement gap, we had an achievement gap of 21 points between African American and white students. Okay, but we still had a 21-point achievement gap, and our students were outperforming the students at the state at some level. So we felt good because our white students, you can see, are very comparable to the state, but our African-American students are outperforming their counterparts at the state level. So you go, okay, that's how we closed the achievement gap in that year. Now, I'm going to fast forward to this year, and then you're going to see this line that says no state data available. Because as I told you, the disaggregated data for the state of California is embargoed, so we can't compare to the state. But look at our achievement gap. It grew by 8 points. Now, don't be fooled into thinking that, like, oh, numerically we dropped 1 point in English Language Arts, and somehow that's comparable to this 8 point. It's in there. I mean, quantitatively, it's in there to pull apart, but those two numbers aren't related because there's so many subgroups, and subgroups overlap. Because in this data that you're looking at, it also includes English learners. Well, you could be African American and an English learner. You could be African American and a student with a disability. And there's also a category of 2 or more races that isn't even calculated on this particular chart, because once you put that in there, it just becomes incredibly confusing to start talking about the black-white achievement gap and go, wait a minute, aren't maybe some of those kids over there? So for clarity and simplicity, let's look at this achievement gap. We went from 21 points to 29 points. Oh, that says that. My eyes can't see my little screen. Thank you. Which is an 8-point growth in the achievement gap. Interesting. We're going to jump into math. Are there any questions on this? I wish I had this answer like, the next slide's going to solve it. And it doesn't, right? We solved it on the first slide, which is, hey, we're investing in professional learning communities. We are investing in our equity dashboard so we can be more on top of this. But these gaps, as you saw on my first slide, have widened both in English language arts and in math. So, great state of California had a 33-point achievement gap in 2019 in math. We had a 26-point achievement gap in 2019, and that has grown this year to a 32-point achievement gap. So strange. Like for what it's worth, there was an 8-point growth in ELA in the achievement gap, but as a school, we only went down by the 1 point. Here, in the area where we went down by 9 points, the achievement gap didn't grow as much as previously, but it's a bigger gap, right? So apples to apples, it's a bigger gap already. Any questions, any thoughts, any concerns? We all have a similar concern, I'm sure. But like, any thoughts from the board on the achievement gap portion? It's important that we look at it. Ms. Gibbons?
So as you know, this is like the area of most interest for me because it's always great to see that our achievement gap is always less than the state. And I think that's like a great starting point. But I do think it's really interesting to me, if I read it correctly on the ELA side, that all of the populations or the different ethnic populations went down while our white students went up.
You're going to see actually on my next slide. But yes. Scratch on that. On the next slide, I put it, actually, I'll do that right now. It just makes it easier to see, right?
Yeah.
So on this slide, this is English Language Arts, 2019 California, 2019 Westlake versus 2022 Westlake. Remember, overall, we went down by 1 point. Who went up between 19 and 22? White students went up, English learners went up, and students with disabilities went up. And this is why a local executive director called me and said, how in the world did your your student disabilities go up not just in English language arts, but also in math? Nobody went up in math, but our students with disabilities went up in math. But Michelle, back to what you were saying, like white students had, I would say, significant growth here, not here, but in the English language arts. And what's interesting for me is where the white students had significant growth, the African American students didn't go down. They held at 43-43, which is interesting.
And you see I don't know if it's huge, but a significant or a noticeable change on the Asian population as well. And so it makes you kind of wonder what in those years, like the why behind it, right? Like what in those years and what supports. And I don't think that these are things that you look at in 1 year over 1 year and then figure out how to provide additional, supports or remedies or solutions. But I do think it's really something that we should be mindful of and continuing to track and really start to unpack that. Like, what was it? Was it pandemic? Was it, I think this is a really hard year to make those observations and all of that. But I would be curious if next year the data showed something similar and then the next year and how we could wrap supports. I think Westlake does an amazing job with our students with disabilities. I'm wondering if we could start to noodle on other strategies for closing the achievement gap from a race and equity lens as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because our MTSS process for our students who don't qualify for an IEP or don't qualify as a student with disability is similar to that process, right? You have a case manager, you have intentional supports plugged in. It would be interesting to dig and say, okay, who's receiving the MTSS case support, and did they go up? So we start to do some disaggregated data on by subgroup, African American students who receive support versus non-support. I don't know that going back will ever find the why. Please, somebody do it for me. I'd love to know why, but I think with this lens of going forward of going forward, studying ourselves going forward, who's getting what support and what is the impact of that support would be interesting.
Yeah, and I will just tell you, like in the healthcare space, right? There's new initiatives all the time, and part of like it used to be that you had to be like really sick in order to get care management or case management and things like that. Well, now they're starting to look at other factors, and like for one population, it's racial disparities where they can now be wrapped around and case managed. And I'm just curious about if that could flow into the education space where it may not be just disabilities, but it could also be knowing that we're trying to diminish or decrease this gap, that we are starting to be a little bit more proactive about the types of supports.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Josh? Oh, you want to unmute?
Looking at the economically disadvantaged columns, and I know a lot of our focus is to grow, free and reduced lunch and get more students in that population. Does the drop off in that affect our ability to recruit more kids in that category? Or
I mean, I don't think that somebody would say, I don't want to send my student to Westlake because I can't actually speak to why people would choose or not choose Westlake. But I'll tell you, in my decade here, no one qualified for free reduced lunch has said to me, gosh, I was going to go to your school, but it looks like the students with from socioeconomic disadvantaged backgrounds aren't doing well at your school. I think when you start comparing that subgroup actually to other institutions, where it's sad to say, but those are better numbers than maybe down the street. I look at that column, though, as is represented across the other columns, because that's a very interesting. When you get to the intersectionality of multiple columns here, you start to really get into it is really hard to untangle that data. Dr. Galloway?
Yeah, I think this is just so important. I would love to see us moving forward, think about how we could better measure and track this and where achievement gaps are happening. There's really interesting research in the research community about achievement gaps that are narrowing or widening over the summer. And so if we had ongoing better measures that happened in the spring and then the fall, we could do some better analysis here about, do we see achievement gaps narrowing over the summer when we're at home and potentially doing more enrichment with mom and dad and family? Or do we see achievement gaps widening over the summer when we're not in school? And I think that type of analysis would give us better swings.
Yeah, and you can take the spring data and juxtapose it to the fall NWA data and see that and find out, okay, who is starting to regress over the summer and who's not, and jump right in. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I love it. Shannon? Yeah, I'm muting.
It's just kind of what I notice, especially after Michelle pointing out some of the the specific disparities. I just noticed especially that it is the Asian and Black numbers that have dropped the most. I mean, comparatively in the two groups, and thinking about during the time of the pandemic, it wasn't just a pandemic. There was a lot of other racial tensions and violence happening specifically in these two communities. And so it makes me wonder, it's also just, when we put out statements, when we're doing work to tackle those, I think sometimes we have struggled in the past about what is our role in doing some of this? But I think this potentially shows how important all of those types of actions are, and being really intentional about other factors that we can't control when we're targeting the achievement gap. But to see those, it's makes you wonder what impact those things have.
That's great. Yeah, I love this conversation. Thank you, board. Keep talking. Any other comments? I got about 90 more slides. But I love this combo. Anything else here? Yeah. Okay. Cool. I love the topics of conversation. Keep thinking, what do you notice, what do you wonder, as we go forward, and see if we can dovetail some of what comes next. So NWEA, right, which breaks down on a quintile, right, so it doesn't really perfectly align. NWEA is what we use as a universal screener, and we think that it's somewhat predictive for CASP. We think it's useful to look at the fall to fall data right here, because you're going to see the fall to spring relationship, And then we'll start to use this fall and say, oh, well, what does that mean for next spring, in theory? NWA, as typically renorms its percentiles and links to CASP every 5 years. They've gone through an off-cycle renorming recently. We're grappling with some of their linking study, but we think we got the data right here. But it is fascinating because they are, as a nationally norm reference test, that, you know, because norm reference utilizing a curve, they are trying to grapple with, oh my goodness, everyone just shifted this direction on the curve. We need to renorm because the whole nation shifted. Let's take a look at the fall. We know that in 3rd through 8th grade, the students who take the CASP test, that 56.4% of the students met the 61st percentile or above the 60th percentile, because we believe if you're above the 60th percentile, typically on NWEA, you're most likely to meet or exceed standard on CASP. We should have kept this one slide with the bell curve, but if we can all remember the bell curve, and that the line in the middle is the 50th percentile, meaning if you're in the 50th percentile, you're average for the whole nation. What this says is to meet the rigorous requirements of meeting standard in the state of California, when compared to a nationally norm reference test, that you need to be scoring in the 60th percentile. You need to be scoring better than 60% of all the kids who are your age and your grade level on this norm reference test to meet these state criterion standards, which just says that, like, as a state assessment, we ask more of our students in California than maybe some other states. So to be in the 60th percentile, we think if you are in the above the 60th percentile, that you're going to meet standards on CASP. In the fall, we had 56% last year, and this year we're hovering right there at 56% again. In math, we were roughly, let's call it 40% last year, and we have a slight growth right now to 42. Okay, what do we think that means? Well, we know that last year, with 56% on NWEA, we had 62% meet or exceed on CASP. You all with me on that connection? Here they were in the fall, here they are in the spring. So now looking at this fall, we're slightly higher, round up to 57. Might we be right here again? Now, when you go back and look at the 2019 versus 2022, and we fell 1 point, we were pretty high in 2019 when you compare us to California, the county, and the district. So even if we hovered right where we are in ELA, like, we're still outperforming most people. That feels all right. So although we have work to do here always, I feel okay about that. This is the part we're all looking at, right? We had 40% of our students last fall come into the fall and meet that 60th percentile or better on NWA, and only 44% ring the bell in CASP, which I think we feel is underperforming because it was a 9-point drop from previous. So coming into this year, okay, we're 3 points higher right now. What will that mean over here? Maybe some growth. So really, as a school, this is, it's incumbent upon us and our staff right now to go, hey, this is where we are. Who do we intervene with to get us to bend the trend compared to last year, right? We know that last year, as we came back, we were grappling with a lot that was really non-academic. I mean, we were just coming back to school. There was a lot of trauma. I could see the trajectory this year outperforming last year, but I think we have to look at the data and then look at the students and look at the practices and do that work. But there is the comparison between NWA and CASP. I think what's next. No, that's next. That's the next part. The next part. Any thoughts on NWEA? Okay. Katie Davis, see your brain bubbling?
I'm just thinking. I take time.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. You're just like the NWA,
I know.
champion. You're amazing. All right. Well, I want to tell you then how all of this, I mean, it's been 27 slides, all of this will manifest and be visualized by the state of California on the local control funding formulas, California State Dashboard. You all ready for that? All right, nobody's gotten up and gone for food yet, so you're still with me. All right, let's dive in. The Lcff Dashboard, why is it It just says the California State Dashboard, but remember, this is all connected to this movement several years ago to the local control funding formula. They said, hey, local control funding formula, LCFF, we're going to give you control of your own funding, but you got to have a plan to meet our state priorities. There's 8 state priorities. We'll let you control your funding, but you gotta have a plan to meet our 8 state priorities. So where do we do that plan? We call it the LCAP. That just tells another acronym there, right? That's the Local Control Accountability Plan. So we have this accountability plan that says, yes, we have a plan to meet your 8 state priorities. We'll let you control your funding. If you have a plan to meet our priorities, there's our plan. We got a plan. You guys all approved the plan. Then the LCFF dashboard is saying, hey, how'd you do on those priorities? Remember those 8 priorities? And so this is a measurement. Now, we talk about CASP all night long. It is only one line of the 8, but it's the one we all kind of hyper-focus on, perseverate on. Perseverance, it's core value. So here's what the state dashboard looks like, the California State Dashboard. You go in, you type in Westlake Charter School, Sacramento County, and you get the dashboard. The dashboard this year has been redesigned and reconfigured and is relaunching because there's a big data gap between 2019 and 2022. And the dashboard was somewhat configured to say not just how are you doing, but how are you doing juxtaposed to growth over time in a lot of these areas. But now we have this, this blink of time that has no data, so they're relaunching it. I'm going to walk you through these 8 priorities, though, because I want you to recognize that this is what we're all in charge of doing. We wrote that LCAP to say we would meet these 8 priorities. What are the basic conditions of learning? Is your school clean? Is your school safe? Does your school work? Are you teaching the state standards? You asked, like, are these the standards you're teaching? Yes, we are. Do you have a mechanism to engage parents? I would say so. Then you see, measurement number 5, which is, or 4, which is pupil achievement. That's your CASP scores there. The pupil engagement, school climate, course access, and then in the others you'll see that's college and career, which we will not be measured on until we have seniors, which is just feels like a moment away. So you can see that several of these are local. So these are our local indicators. I love the local indicators because they're on us to measure. You can see I put the little red box over there. The red box says for your local indicators, entities, LEAs like us have to report one of 2 things. You met that local indicator or you did not meet that local indicator. You have to self-analyze and self-report. I haven't found anybody who has not met one local indicator yet. Everyone's doing a great job on those. That's what happens when you don't have like a standardized test score, right? Everyone's like, yeah, we're doing great. Not true. I mean, everybody's working on something, but our local indicators, I presented them in front of the board. You've seen them, and we will have those on our dashboard. This is the part I think that is quantifiably the most complex and interesting because this utilizes data that's uploaded directly to the state. So in the area of pupil achievement, they're not looking at our grade books because those are not uploaded to the state. They're looking at CASP. They're saying, hey, how'd you do on CASP? And in that area, they're saying, hey, how'd your English learners do? So all of our English learner status on the dashboard is partly from CASP and partly from LPAC. All right, another standardized test given by the state. Pupil engagement is measured by chronic absenteeism, which again, we take our absenteeism report. That's how we're funded through ADA, right? We upload it to the district uploads it to the county uploads it to the state, so the state knows that they can measure us on this dashboard based on chronic absenteeism. And then again, this quantifiable measure down here is on track for graduation rate, but we won't have until senior year. So let's dive in then and take a look at really the achievement piece, the CASP piece that we've been talking about all night, the academic piece, my little predictions, my little crystal ball right there. I want you to understand how it's calculated because it has somewhat stayed the same and somewhat changed. And I know it's the end of a lot of slides, but stick with me because I think it's interesting, and if you don't, it'll be over soon. First, we have to calculate the distance from standard. So standard is like the scale score that you need to meet the standard. Remember on CASP, it's meet or exceed. What is the minimum score you need to meet the standard? We have to determine each student's distance from standard value. If you exceeded the standard on your scale score, you're a positive. And if you didn't meet the standard, you have a negative score. So step one, determine the value of each student's score based on the delta between their score and the standard. Let's give you an example. The minimum score to meet standard in third grade ELA is a 2340. It's a scale score. If a student scores a 2330, they have a distance from standard as -10. You with me? That kid just missed ringing the bell by 10 points. So when we go to calculate distance from standard, that kid is a -10. Okay, that's their score. Now we're going to sum all the distance from standard scores and divide by the number of participating students, right? So this kid's a -12, this kid's a +10, chicka, 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 and you come out with a score. Are you all with me? Right? So we went through, we calculated all of our distance. We know we came down in ELA, and we know we came down in math, so we're trying to figure out how bad. What's really interesting about this, right? When I conceptualize this distance from standard piece, I know how hard it is for a kid to work on this test to get to, it's just as hard as they can. I made it. I just met standard. I'm a 2330. That's awesome. How much am I worth? You're a 0. If you meet standard, you're a 0. Right? If you're 2340, you get 0 points on this distance from standard. Now, if a kid works even harder and they're 10 points above standard, we're worth 10 points to the overall score, or 20 points, or 50 points. They got to work hard to get up there, I'm assuming. I've never been up there. It looks hard. But if you're the kid who's like, hey, ski slope, whee! That kid could cost you 60, 70, 80, 90, 120 negative points. Like if you just go through and go click, 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 and do the opposite of working hard, you could cost us on this scale far more. And look, it doesn't happen very often. But we do look at the scores and go, hey, Dr. Galloway, this is your student. And the teacher goes, oh my gosh, that kid's a stud. Like that kid, right? Like we'll look at it and we'll talk to the teacher and go, what do you think of so-and-so? And they go, oh, right? So there's a part of that there. I'm not saying it's everything, but I'm saying it is an interesting factor when you calculate in this methodology how hard it is to gain 10 points and how easy it is to blow one kid who purposely just pushes buttons and costs you 50 points, erases 10 kids, or who are 5 points above standard. It's interesting. That's my rant. Okay, this is the state of California saying we are restarting the accountability matrix. It used to be that you took this distance from standard. Remember the color-coded rainbow chart?
So no baseball.
I had slides on here and I deleted them because I knew it was going too long anyway. So just the long and short was they used to say take your distance from standard, and that tells you whether you're very low, low, medium, high, or very high. And then you said, okay, did you grow this year or recess this year? And then it's a sliding scale and they give you a color code. They said we would never just measure you on a one piece of data, one test. That's ridiculous. We're always going to take a look at growth over time. Oh, we can't do growth over time because we don't have data from last year? Let's get rid of that piece and just do this. We're like, so they built this very complex system and said, we'll never do the one test thing. And now they're back to the one test thing. And I think they're embarrassed and they're not releasing their data. But it is what it is. We're all a little embarrassed. Here's their justification right here that the California, has utilized Assembly Bill 130 that says, hey, we can't do growth over time. We're just doing single point of data. So there we go. So here's where we are, friends. Our distance from standard in English language arts dropped 17 points. Our distance from standard number is a +7 this year. So as a school, we're 7 points above standard in English language arts. To be medium, you could be as low as -5 and still be a medium. You could be as high as a 9.9, which means we're 3 points away from having been high, which is okay because you're going to find out later we were high in math only by 2 points last time. So sometimes you just make the cut or don't make the cut. But we were a +24. We dropped 17 points. We're a +7. These are weird numbers to look at because I told you a minute ago, hey, we just went down one point. That's not so bad. And you're like, that's a lot of points right there. And this is the points that are going to be on the dashboard.
Well, and that's an important, I'll just stop, is the fact that this is distinctly us. Like the other slides were us like comparison change over time in comparison to California and whatnot, right? But all these this math here is just our students, correct?
Correct.
And so I think it translates just a little different because it's a different data.
Well, it is because there's a difference between saying, "Hey, 62% of our kids met standard." You go, "Hey, 62%? That's a lot of kids. You guys do pretty good." You're like, "Well, are you just getting kids to met?" Because boy, are you 62% met and the other do the math real quick, 38%. The other kids, are they like all so far low that you got to go in and look at the data on this. So I get this distance from metric because it really helps you say, yeah, 62% pass, that's great, but clearly some kids are not meeting standard if it's pulling you all the way down. Now you're going to see in math, it's negative 34, right? I mean, it's all the way down in the low category. And last time, we were high in math by 2 points. We had just made it. We're like, oh, we made it. But look at this drop. We missed medium completely and dropped all the way down there. Which tells you something else. Like, look at this. The percentage of students who met or exceeded did drop. But the distance from met dropped dramatically, which tells me that the kids who were going to meet the standard met the standard, but the kids who didn't meet the standard really didn't meet the standard, which is interesting because then it goes back to like, is it because they didn't know the math? Is it because they weren't? And we'll find out over time, right? We'll take the test multiple times. We'll come back to NWA. It'll be interesting, but it's very disappointing that this is what our dashboard will say. Now, somebody's going to say, it's okay. Every one of the schools in our neighborhood is going to look somewhat like this, and every one of the schools in the state is going to look somewhat like people are going to drop, but nobody wants to be the person who looks like that.
But this is your mirror ball, right?
This is a pretty solid.
But so if it's one data point, how do we use 2019? Like, so how is the state measuring distance from met in a year where there's no other data to measure it from?
Distance from met is still a single data point. What you're thinking is, but the state used to say, oh, distance from met, you're a low. But since you grew by 8 or more points, we're going to move you over into medium.
No, I get it.
We're not doing the growth anymore.
But it's not even the same test.
No, but these metrics at the top didn't change.
I'm just highlighting.
Yeah. But truth. But distance from standard is, they said to meet standard in 3rd grade is a scaled score of 2340. And so it's just quantitative. You just go, hey, at least 40% of our kids met that standard and some exceeded, but the other 60% of our kids didn't, and how far they didn't makes an impact.
Right, and I think that's the key takeaway for people who are watching or anything else is this math. Well, up here on a slide, we're seeing a comparison between 2019 and 2022. At the end of the day, the data for each year is the data from that year.
Which is why the state of California says don't compare to 2019. However, if I came out here today and didn't compare to 2019, I'd feel like I wasn't being transparent. This may not be comparable data, and somebody more quantitatively brilliant than me, I'm looking at someone now, could probably tell me. Like, we could probably get into this and be like, somebody's going to do the research and find out, oh, hey, guys, you shouldn't have done that, and here's why. But, like, as a community member, I couldn't not come out and say, well, it's hard to not say where were we 2 years ago. Whether or not the numbers are the same, I'll tell you this. In the state of California, they thought that our achievement was high in math, and now they think our achievement is low, regardless of like whether or not negative 32 or negative 34 and 2.2 actually have like a correlation. Whether or not those are actually speaking to one another doesn't really matter. What matters is somebody has looked at our data and said you qualify as low achieving in math.
Right. In the same way, if someone scored lower than us on math, they could still be a medium or high.
In the old chart.
Correct.
Not
Well,
now.
that's why I'm just trying to highlight how like sort of non-comparable those things are because of the fact that you could score a 20 in math on the overall standard, but still be a medium or high here, depending on how you're on the micro level.
Yeah, what you're referring to, right, is on the old color-coded chart, you could score lower than Westlake on math, but since you had made a big growth that year, you could be color-coded as a green or a blue, which is above us because we were perceptibly yellow.
Well, even without colors, though, like on what is now looks like a magical cell signal chart.
Yes.
I mean, right? I mean, that's what it looks like.
I didn't see that.
You might see. Oh, sorry, I've ruined it
that's good.
forever. You might see a school that you. I'm just saying it could. The numbers never is always correlated differently on whether it was a Trivial Pursuit piece or a cell phone signal. Like it.
I mean, what these large data points don't do is tell you about your student population, you know? And so you go, hey, how can you compare school to school? That's why I try to contextualize our data by comparing us to 3 other schools that looked somewhat like us. And then we'll see their distance from standard. And if their distance from standard like is off the chart, very high, like how are you very high, but only 2 points above us? And so we'll see, we'll see. And somebody's gonna make the cut. Like we're a negative 34, someone's gonna be a negative 24, and then we're like, but what that says though is like, if kids are all trying their hardest, you're gonna see not this big gap between very low and that standard. You're gonna see kids lots of kids just underneath the standard, right? And that would move your distance from standard up. And in schools where people are just phoning it in, you're like, you have kids meeting it and kids not meeting it, and you're like, I don't know if you tried hard enough. And that's something we need to talk about. We've talked about as the admin team, like, hey, are we sure that when we come around to this test, that everybody understands the benefits of trying hard? It's one tiny piece of it.
Well, I'm not in this comment. I'm not validating the system, but I've always appreciated these numbers because it feels like more. It's so micro. It tells us how our students are doing. Not necessarily even by comparison, right? But seeing that kind of change highlights an issue, sort of regardless of how it's compared to others or how things shake out.
Yes. However, before we all beat ourselves up over a 36-point drop, nothing is good or bad unless compared to something else. And if you compare negative 34 to 2.2, yep, that is a comparison. However, when you look at negative 34 and compare it to what's about to come out across the entire state of California, I think before we start beating ourselves up and being like, oh, we must have done a bad job, we might be like, oh, we did the best job of everybody else who did the bad job. And just go, hey, we have work to do. We're going to go forward. We're not going to beat ourselves up over this. We have amazing teachers, incredible staff, plugged in families. Like, we're okay. You know what I mean? Dr. Galloway?
Yeah, thanks. I think I just want to echo that, like standard is a socially constructed word, and whether it was appropriate to use the word standard in 19 and 22 and the same benchmark, quantitative number is people made that call in a room, and whether that was the right call or the wrong call is just a call people made. So, yeah, I think that we've got work to do, but I think, we all have work to do.
Yeah, and what I don't want to see us do is knee-jerk to something that we've already got a plan. We've got a plan. It's the plan we're working on. We all think it's the right plan, and we're going to keep working the plan. What I'm more interested, I think, is what the plan we were talking about earlier was like, okay, these are overall numbers. But that achievement gap piece, I look at those numbers and go, okay, that's something we can noodle on internally. These big overall numbers, well, I don't think we'll panic. I'm going to go back to my observations. Our new baseline is lower than our previous baseline, but the achievement gaps in the new baseline are greater than the previous gaps. That special education and English learners made growth in math and English language arts, and I think that's something not just a bright spot, but maybe something we go, what did we do there? Why did that work, and how can we apply it to other groups? That we have actions, that we have plans, that we're not just sitting still, right? That we are investing deeply in professional learning community collaboration that's data-driven and will continue to improve student outcomes. And it's the work that we were doing. When we reached the previous achievement in 2019, we all felt pretty good about ourselves. We were kind of killing it in the neighborhood. And the fact that we dropped and everybody else dropped, we shouldn't beat ourselves up. We're going to continue doing the work that we were doing that led us to 2019, and we're going to just bring ourselves right back to where we know we can be. I'm really excited about the math pilot. I think, have we done it 3 years ago, right? And then we're going to leverage the new data dashboard to more regularly monitor outcomes. I mean, I think we're going to have much better conversations because of the data work that we're intending to do on a regular basis. And by the way, shout out to Katie Davis. She's just untangled some data that we're like, wow, you can do that? So we're really on to some cool stuff right now in our data systems. And with that, I will ask, do you have any other questions, observations? What do you notices? What do you wonder? Any questions, thoughts, or concerns? Shannon?
Yeah, so looking at the categories
You are, sorry.
that did improve, I wonder about just, again, some of the nature of like hybrid learning and at-home learning and some of the opportunities in terms of having more of your potentially bilingual supports at home. When we see English learners numbers going up, same thing with students with disabilities. How does having more of like an independent or asynchronous works schedule for a couple of years coming back in help change some of the ways that we interact potentially? And then I think interestingly, having seen the free and reduced lunch numbers go down too, one of the things we definitely talked about was the Wi-Fi or the stability of the household in terms of accessing some of the hybrid learning environments. So and I wonder if and how those things, so in some ways it's not surprising to me that those are some of the categories that did those changes, but yeah, I wonder about those.
That's good wonders. I love it. Katie Davis?
I think like it relates to that, but also goes back to where you celebrated us reconnecting with our community. As we focus on this academic piece, maintaining our focus on our students' social emotional learning and well-being, because thinking about coming out of the pandemic, and that was traumatic for everyone in a different way, and how does that affect our students last year with different pieces and absenteeism and all those things. And so reconnecting, getting our students back in school more and more comfortable in this space after not being here, that's not necessarily something that we can measure as we look at, say, next year's data, but I think it's a variable that exists in there. And so just continuing the work we're doing social emotionally for our students as well.
I think hindsight's 2020, but it's easy to forget the reality of what came before us. You're looking at these data points, and I did 72 slides, so I clearly overanalyzed too. But you're looking at these data points, and I think we didn't do a single slide on what it actually looked like in the classroom throughout last year. And it was a struggle. And bringing the community and reconnecting the community and the joyfulness that feels like International Walk to School Day, just like that alone is very different than it was last year. That alone may cure part of what woes us. Yeah. Michelle?
I have a wonder, now that we're on the standards-based grading and teachers knowing the students and having that time to really assess whether a student met the metrics or not. I wonder if you looked at the achievement gap on that and what that would look like.
It's a great suggestion. Maybe we'll take that to heart. Totally. It's fascinating. So Katie, that's what Katie actually untangled recently, was this interesting way of taking CASP data, uploading it into Illuminate, then bringing out of Illuminate local benchmark data, and then utilizing some formula magic to like juxtapose it to CASP to try to determine by group performance locally versus performance on these CASP scores. And it's fascinating. I mean, I'm telling you, like the standards-based grading approach, along with the commitment to re-engagement and reassessment, demonstrates mastery at a far greater rate than these single, but for the rest of our lives, we'll always have to have this standardized test score. Yes, let's do some achievement gap disaggregation with multiple points of data. Yeah, I love that. Anybody else? I can clearly talk all night.
I mean, I think it's maybe being a parent of a high schooler where I'm hesitant on comparison. Like, I would be the first, as you know, to be in your office to go through this data and break it down 4 years ago and see how we compare and do all of that. And I'm much more interested now, post pandemic, and I'm excited that we're doing it, but diving into our data, I guess, and seeing how we're helping our students. Like, this has informed a lot of practices, particularly through the history of Westlake. There was a time when these scores, I mean, I think might have leveled an organization without a different leader to sort of guide us forward, right? You having that voice of now being the time to move forward, to learn from things, to come together, to make these changes. I just think it's really important. And so I just don't want people to get lost in this when it breaks. Is my fear, right? And I think that was sort of what I was trying to play devil's advocate a bit with my comments, is the fact that it can be easy to be a simplistic chart that doesn't even begin to tell you the story.
Yeah. There's plenty of celebrations to be had that aren't just simple quantitative, comparisons between 2 years that may not even compare on the actual assessment. Yeah. This is good. Anything else, team? All right, I'm going to close up my academic readiness report. Slides.
Before you do that, will you please see if anyone commented on them?
Yeah. I'm going to start one.
It is very small, though.
Yeah.
That's big. He's got his email very big.
Well, because I got to read it out loud.
It's really funny, just real fast, when it goes from that screen to the presentation screen, it's like, and then it's.
I love this comment. This commenter has commented to me many times about this topic, and so I'm looking forward to reading her comment. Shall I? Fantastic. Comment for consent agenda. Kudos to the board and admin team for getting that notice of exemption on the consent agenda. We are very excited to see our K-12 community moving forward. Thanks to everyone for your steadfast focus on moving forward despite some challenging years. What wonderful news to start off the term of our fantastic high school teacher and coach, Dr. Galloway. Your insight and input will be a valuable addition to the board. Welcome, Dr. Galloway. Sincerely, Mrs. Johnson, our favorite commenter. I will forward this to you for the record. But yes, she is, I'm sure was happy to see that notice of exemption. She mentioned the coffee talk. Hey, how we doing? How we moving? I said, oh, there's something on the agenda coming up. Something to you, and no other.
Perfect. Are there any future agenda items that you can think of for next month? I mean, I know that we don't really have anything major until December. So there'll continue to be board updates and whatnot. And I'm sure things will come up that will fill the agenda. I'm sure. That brings us to the reflection portion of the evening. Would someone like to go first about sharing what worked well or what would be better if?
Just a reminder for those who are new, we reflect to make this meeting better. We are always in a continuous cycle of improvement. So what would have made this meeting better, or what about this meeting we should replicate next time to make it gooder again?
I'll start. I like the insertion of which board goal and strategic goal we're focusing on as you do that. We spend a ton of time on those goals, and I really like the fact that we're bringing it back in to further emphasize why we're doing what we're doing. I like that.
Love it. Thanks, Josh.
Norali, would you mind going second? You can pass and we can come back to you.
No. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Is obviously my first time on the board. Really, the way we were able to dive into the numbers of things. I know we have a good conversation. I know you always have a great presentation, Dr. Ike, but today's kind of not the goal of comparison, but also really getting everyone's idea. I hear from Impact Committee, which is a huge part, and kind of bringing all that to the board and really able to see what all the different committees are doing from that perspective and how we're going to be moving forward in different areas and what each committee is going to look at. I think was just a great idea when it comes to, especially the academic committee.
Thank you.
Shannon?
All the way back at the beginning, one thing that worked really well is I like seeing about the internship credential pilot program. I think just such an important piece that we've talked about a lot and impact, but also again, as a board goal, as a committee goal, to see us literally putting our money where our mouths are in terms of we already were trying to figure out how to better recruit and retain our staff. And then obviously the teacher shortage put this into just like a really imperative moment. And I really just like seeing that ideas have come from, well, not just from us, but like from all of the conversations with teachers and the admin team and everyone, and that it's like happening, and I'm excited for the pilot.
Michelle?
Apologies for not being here for the full meeting. But I will say just the data and being willing to explore what the data looks like around the achievement gap works well for me, because it does show the commitment. You can't address what we don't know, and appreciate the commitment that you show by bringing the data to us and allowing us to noodle and wonder on it. And it sounds like you already have the right folks in place to start to really unpack it even further. So that really appreciate that.
Cool. Thank you.
Steve, would you like to reflect?
I would just like to thank the public who came out this evening. It was a great event. It was great to have an audience here. And I know it takes effort sometimes to talk to people and ask them to come out. So just recognizing that the work that went into that. And I also want to thank Wave. Wave made their first donation to the school, so I didn't want to let that slip by, but we received that. So again, it was amazing. So thank you again, Wave, for your partnership.
No picture this time? We really do need a big check that we can dry erase.
Yeah, we need a big dry erase.
Yeah, we do. We need a dry erase check. Dr. Galloway, it was a big deal when we used to take these pictures every time.
I think like similarly, I'm very excited about the grow your own model. I think that is just such a powerful way to bring educators here. So I'm excited for some people I know that I've been kind of like leaning on, like just a tiny bit. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that. I'm excited for my first board meeting, and man, the snack bar is like really high. I mean, like, wow, your snack game is on point.
It's like
here.
this every meeting. Every meeting. Yeah, right.
We'll never be like this again.
That's right. That's amazing. Nancy Kosbaskis.
I tend to call staff by their just out of habit of being a parent here. So Mrs. Davis, but I will remember that.
I appreciated just the view of the board and the comments around John's academic report. I always appreciate your transparency in that data, but I know for myself, and John, you know this about me, like I like narrow in on the data and am so focused on the numbers, but getting to hear the conversation within this group and just having such a diverse group of people from different backgrounds and different like areas of expertise is really valuable to our conversation and moving forward.
Hey, Deb, you want to celebrate?
Yes. I'm gonna
celebrate, reflect.
Yeah, I'm gonna do all those things. I'm gonna tag on to Katie because as somebody who had a student here who didn't always excel in the academic area, having that focus of her whole student and her whole well-being, right? So while we're looking at the academic data, we're also recognizing that students learn differently, that their needs need to be met, and all of that put together is what makes a successful Explorer. And I think that the school's commitment, the board's commitment, the parents' commitment to that philosophy really sets us apart and serves our kiddos well. So I'm reflective on that.
My reflection is a similar reflection to every time I get to reflect, and it's always on a time where you guys have been super engaged. This is your meeting. It is not a public meeting, but a meeting in public. And when our board members engage and dialogue and wonder and notice and drive, like that's what makes this meeting. And so that was the best part of this meeting for me, was hearing every single one of you contributed to the collective wealth of knowledge that we're walking out here with. So that's the best part.
For me, it's the opportunity to reflect on all the things we do as part of our curriculum. Like there was discussion of a math adoption, like we are only doing one thing in math, right? Like knowing that there are so many different pieces that will just be a jumping off point to our program and how we adjust and adapt to students and to meet their needs. I think it came out tonight in the report, but just to reflect on continuing to present and discuss that so that people who are watching our meetings or participating can see the level of personalization we do, not even just at the student level, but across the board for the entire institution.
Good point.
So with that, we will go ahead and take a short break in case people need to use the restroom and whatnot, grab a snack. But we'll go into a closed session for real property negotiation. And we don't anticipate a report out. So anyone watching at home, please feel free to go to bed or do other things. And have a great night.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Let me turn off the